Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who are teaching the truth and sincerity. And shout out to the Akims out there in the four corners of the earth proclaiming this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, Brakatum. So it looks like I only got 15 minutes left on that. Sorry, Salakia for, this running out of room, but we'll just go with it, right? So, getting into the headlights, and like everything else, though, it looks like the war stalled for a little while, but you got a lot of moves going on, right? Because pretty much the U.S. and Israeli state, well, they ran out of ammo, trying to capitulate Iran, So Iran, of course, hasn't capitulated, but they got other wars springing up, right? United Arab Emirates versus Saudi Arabia, and now King Bibi has officially declared that once he's got his way with Iran, he's going after Turkey next. Well, that's where Ezekiel 38 comes in, So get this while I can before this video runs out, because I only got 15 minutes left on this. Salakia about the 15 minutes, but we're just going to go with it, right? I'll just make up for it with the in-home lessons. But, here's some other things that are going on. They're going to run out of fuel in July, and California is one of the first that's going to be hit here in Babylon. So, I'll play this one in its entirety.
U.S. oil storage tanks are on track to run dry by July 4th. Here's what that actually means. The senior advisor at the Carlyle Group said it on Bloomberg last week. So I want to make this video and go over what that actually means for you. But before I get into this, give me a follow if you want regular updates on this catastrophic war and the economic fallout. I'm a veteran and I have a master's degree in supply chain management. So I've studied logistics and how the bullwhip effect, which is the idea that disruptions take time to ripple through a system, than the initial shock suggests.
But it begins in July.
This looks like a textbook example of the bullwhip effect. First, let's
you don't need hantavirus, do you, with this? But they keep the fear of hantavirus, right?
Storage tanks are getting low. They think, okay, the tanks themselves are almost empty, but that's not exactly what this means. You see, oil storage tanks require a minimum volume of liquid for the pumps to actually function. When levels drop below a minimum threshold, the remaining oil becomes physically inaccessible. The pumps fail, the oil can't move, and the pipeline stops functioning. So you haven't literally run out of oil, but you run out of the ability to access the oil you do have. And the last 15 to 20% of that oil can't be accessed due to floating grooves that they put on top of the tanks to prevent evaporation. When those get too low, risk collapse, which creates fire and explosion risks. So when Jeff Curry, the senior advisor at the Carlyle Group, goes on Bloomberg and says that he's never seen anything like this before in history, and that tanks will hit bottoms in Europe this month and in the United States around July 4th.
Yep, around July 4th. So you get it, right? With the fact that, they got no new oil coming in, and that everything is going to pretty much cause disruptions, right? Because it takes fuel to get from point A to point B, which is going to cause everything else. See, that's already there. You don't even need hantavirus to cause this, but they got to keep the fear going, right? Because of course it was a losing war. There was no exit plan, etc. They wouldn't be able to reopen the strait, which was all done on purpose. But to take the attention off of them, you got to have the hantavirus scamdemic. Because the last scamdemic towards the end of Trump's first presidency, right? It had to be airborne, and everybody all of a sudden, it's spreading worldwide, and they had to lock everything fucking down, causing the domino effect. But like everything else, though, that's just the beginning of things, right? But then you'd have the war, and what did happen during Biden's administration, right? Yeah, you had things linking up to it, but the full-blown war of Iran, they were waiting for the re-election of Donald Trump to really get things started, because he'd be the one, because he was an Amalekite himself. Yes, Donald Trump is Amalek. We've gone into that several times here. You know, that he ain't just playing ball with them. He is one of them, man. He's part of the Kabbalah. You know, he is part of Amalek. You know, he's that seed. You know, he's also Nero 47. You know, it goes back to Nero. But nonetheless, though, you know, to get a grip, right? You know, to cause, you know, everything. You know, but like everything else, though, well, we can see that Gomer is about to enter into the war too. And that is because the Israeli state's going to launch their war against Turkey as well, lighting them up, because right now United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia are fighting back and forth. You know, so that's already gotten started over the fact that United Arab Emirates had exited OPEC, which was done under Donald Trump. So you see how everything's getting trumped up and everything's getting accelerated. You know, it's exciting times. Ezekiel chapter 38, it reads, because eventually Russia's going to get involved, because all these are BRICS members. Turkey's a BRICS member, Iran's a BRICS member, Saudi Arabia's a BRICS member, and I believe United Arab Emirates recently joined too, so they're all BRICS members. You know, so they're getting ready to go to war in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. Ezekiel 38, verse 4, it reads, I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and bring thee forth all thine army, horses and horsemen. You know, that is, all these ICBMs into the forefront, because remember, they're going to be doing away with oil very soon. And that's all being done on purpose to usher in the MOTB, the mandates. Well, you have to have the crisis in place, so they're going to go to war over this, you know. And the consequence of taking the MOTB, the mandated implant, is being caught into World War III. You know, ultimately getting destroyed in Babylon the Great when it goes down by way of those ICBMs, which there's 200 million of. All of them clothed all sorts of armor, a great company of bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. That is ICBMs, right? Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. You know, having these systems ready to deploy. Slovakia, I'm going to have to replace that too. Gomer and all its bands, and the house of Gomer, the north quarters and all its bands, and many people with thee. So, in other words, Turkey is going to be in this fight. Well, the Israeli state, King Bibi himself, not just Bennett, but King Bibi himself said that, well, Turkey's next. You know, that they're going to go after Turkey as well. That he'll be the next Saddam Hussein. You know, that they're going to remove him like they did with Saddam Hussein, because they had their way with Iraq for so long. And of course, they're now coming out with evidence that, of course, Iraq was attacked several times during this recent war against Iran, which is really the beginning of the Third World War. But the Third World War ends in these ICBMs launched from the four quarters of the earth, 200 million of them. And by way of these was a third part of man killed. Be thou prepared, prepare thyself, all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou guard unto them. In other words, they will all have ICBMs. They will all have deployment systems in place. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm and be like a cloud to cover the land. Thou and all thy bands and many people with thee, to go against what? Go against the Israelis, the Greater Israel Project. You're hearing a lot about the Greater Israel Project, and that's what this whole war has been about, the Greater Israel Project. And to stop them, Russia's going to go after them. Thus saith the Lord, Yahweh, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, thou shalt think an evil thought. You know? And what's that? Well, to go to war with them, right? To go to war with these Israelis. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, and will go up to them that are at rest, all of them that dwell safely, having neither walls nor gates nor bars, to take a spoil, and to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people which are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land. You know, talking about these, you know, gutter rats, these Amalekites, you know, these 1948ers. But also to come against Babylon, right? Because who could take thee down, right? Who could rise up to thee? Who could stand up to thee, right? Who is like unto thee? You know, these are the things that King Babylon has often said, you know, that there's none other like America, right? You know, that America is this great fortress, you know, and that nobody can take America down. You know, that America's doing great, even though it's not, you know. And see, like everything else, though, you know, you're going to have uprisings everywhere. Jacob's trouble, well, it's not coming, it's already here. This king of Babylon has been like a madman, sparing none. You know, because he knows that he hath but a short time. Yeah, he watches our videos. You know, we've seen DJ Chump show up lots of times on our videos. You know, and even make posts, make comments on it. He's been doing this a very long time. He even said, in his, you know, out loud that we must reject these prophets of doom because he knows that we're right. You know, because he knows he's going into slavery very soon. You know, because he also has the nickname Bunker Boy because they've been building bunkers everywhere because they plan to have a nuclear war very soon. See, they know about the nuclear war because they're the ones that are planning it, you know, to pretty much, you know, they know that their end is coming. You know, there's nothing they can do about the angels of the Most High. That their force, their space force, they going to be able to do nothing. But the Most High Yahweh is going to put in their hearts that they can do something, right? You know, that they can win against an alien invasion, which is why UFOs have been what you would call disclosed, you know, and they're admitting, you know, that they're unclassified now. They're no longer classified files, you know, showing that yeah, the UFOs are real. And so, like everything else, though, they plan to deceive everyone into thinking that these are, you know, little green men, etc. But yet we know those are the angels of the Most High, and they're getting ready to destroy this place. So a destroying wind is coming, you know, and who shall be able to stand up to it? None shall be able to stand up, you know. So like everything else, though, you know, I don't have much time on this thing. It's about to go out, so I'm just going to continue this back home, but you know, just wanted to get this out there anyway. So look for more videos. Salakia for so short, but you know, I wasn't prepared enough, and I need to make more room and all that on here. So hopefully this has all been edifying. For that, I want to say Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Bashem Kakadash, Wa Abba Babal, Brakatum, Jehovah elect, Shalom.